Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Mindful Eating with Lindsey Baris. Before I introduce Lindsey, I'm just going to bring a couple things to your attention. This program tonight is part of our Winter Wellness program. If you haven't already gotten your Winter Wellness brochure, you're going to want to grab one and sign up for the drawing upstairs. Inside are all of our programs for the next 3 months, along with the Luminous board game, which you use to also have the opportunity to win prizes. Tonight you get 2 tickets automatically for attending this program, so you'll want to stop at the desk to get those. On Saturday, we have our 8 Dimensions of Wellness, which is an overall program dealing with the theme of the entire Robust series. This is a really good one. You're going to want to attend this one for getting just an overall feel of what the goals are of the wellness initiative. There will also be specific prizes that are only available at that event, which is kind of extra fun. But yeah, tell your friends. This is a good one. One more I want to bring your attention to. This is not until February 7th. But this is a big deal, something we're doing in collaboration with the university, and it will be at the university. Abdul will be here in River Falls live, presenting his research that he personally did to create the Netflix series, Who Killed Malcolm X. So check out more information about that online, and you're going to want to register ahead for that. As you're going through your brochure, you'll see that there are various programs that you do need to register ahead for, and they're filling up fast, so you might want to check that out. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Lindsey here now. Lindsey is one of the owner-operators and manager of Rising Sun Farm and Orchard located in River Falls. Rising Sun has been an operating organic vegetable farm since 1974. Lindsey and her husband have been farming there for 11 years. They grow vegetables, apples, pork, lamb, chickens, and maple syrup and sell wholesale to grocery stores and restaurants, as well as the River Falls Farmers Market and off the farm through their store and CSA program. Lindsey is the vice president of her county chapter of the Wisconsin Farmers Union, sits on the board of the River Falls Farmers Market, and serves on a board committee for the Whole Earth Grocery Co-op. Welcome, Lindsey.
Thank you very much. So I have created this slideshow for you to kind of help me organize my thoughts. Other than that, I'm just winging everything that I'm saying and I think that's okay, because this is my life and you can't really plan a talk for your life. I live and breathe all of this stuff. So at the end, I want you to ask me questions. I love questions, and hopefully I don't talk so much that we do actually have time for questions at the end, because I can talk about any of these issues for a long time. So this is the first picture here is my daughter. And when I think about healthy communities, I think about the children, of course, and having kids on the farm, eating vegetables. That is like the epitome of like a healthy life. So I had to put this on there. She's 7 now. I think right there, she's like 3, but she's adorable. So I organized this talk about what sorts of things mindful eating plays a part in our community. So it's not just healthy for your body, but it's healthy for the community in general. And so I've broken it down a little bit. So this is mainly about why to buy locally. And I'm going to specify local food, of course, because that's what I do. But this kind of plays a part in all local buying. So why buy locally? It is part of the local economy. It keeps our money in our community. which makes for a financially healthy community, which there is a workshop or was a workshop on through this wellness program. It is safe. It's safer for the food supply. It's a healthier diet, and it helps the environment. And I'm going to go through each one of those points a little bit more in detail. So here's a whole bunch of statistics that I'll let you look at for a minute. I'm not going to read every single one of them, but this just kind of shows us how our food system is working these days. It's not working for our communities, and it's not working for the health of the people and the farmers. And so these statistics just show us that there are certain corporations that own a lot of stuff, which makes it really, really hard for people like me to properly function within our community. So it's very hard to be a farmer like I am. And I guess I'll give you a little bit of insight of the type of farmer I am. So I am coming from the perspective of a small to medium diversified farm. I'm not coming from a background of row cropping or dairy. I do grow animals, but it's not our main thing. It's mainly vegetables. We grow 30 different types of vegetables. It's not any one thing. And so I'm coming from that background. And so stuff like this, like 70% of our nation's produce is grown in 3 states: California, Texas. I can't remember the other one. But that's a problem for our community. And it's a problem for me as a farmer, because if everyone's getting all of their produce from super far away, they're not going to buy produce from me and the other farmers in our locality. So that kind of brings up the consolidation in agriculture, which is our main agriculture system. There are so many downsides to consolidation, which is the big guys owning a lot of stuff and taking over. And they're the ones that have most influence on agriculture law, which is the laws make it directly harder for farmers like me to be profitable. Because of the regulations that they put on the big farms, they also put on the little farms, even though we're a world of difference. Very, very different. I don't own 2,000 acres of green beans. So it's a different situation. So they control the prices of things in the store. They control the prices of fertilizer, of any amendments that you put in soils. So things that I do purchase, we purchase amendments, we purchase seeds, and we also sell things. And when those prices are all controlled by these giant corporations, it makes my profit capabilities way harder. So that kind of gives you a picture of how hard it is to be a small farmer in the agriculture system today. I can talk about this situation for hours, but I'm not going to, because there is a sunny side. So the benefit of the local farmers and not getting stuff from California or Texas, which most of our grocery stores do automatically. If we try to support the farmers that are in our area, it will support the community by keeping the money in there. It supports the local businesses. Farmers will employ people in our community, so the money continues to circulate there, and it just continues to help the community grow and become a robust rural community. So the next part, I'm not going to talk about consolidation for an hour. The next part is that buying and eating locally will help benefit you as a human. It will help the body become healthier. So when produce is moved from California, from Texas, how old is that produce? It could be weeks old. It can be months old, depending on what it is. It could be a year old if it's apples. And the longer that stuff is stored and the longer it is transported, the less nutrients will be in that food. And I have resources to back that up. It is a thing. And if you get stuff that is grown in your community, so local food is kind of defined as food that has come from 100 miles or less. And so usually the produce that we get, the 70% of our produce comes from 1,150 miles away. So think about how long it takes for your produce to get to the store, and then how long does it sit at the store. So as it sits, it's losing its nutrient content and its flavor, which is the most important part, of course. So that also brings me to the safer part of the situation. So when produce is shipped that far away, it is more likely to be contaminated with bacteria, with viruses. That's in also the big farms. That's why we see breakouts in bagged spinach and romaine lettuce, and that all that stuff is coming from California mainly. So we didn't have that problem when there was the whole outbreak of romaine. I was still happily selling romaine to our co-op and not worrying about anything. But if you go to the neighboring grocery store that won't buy the local produce, that's the stuff they're offering. So it is safer for everyone to keep it local, keep it close. And there's I got the miles a little bit wrong. It's 1,500 miles. It's more than what I thought. 1,500 miles is the average US food that's moved, but that is just a small percentage of the actual food that's in the grocery store, because a lot of the food in the grocery store comes from other countries. So that's just in our country. All right, I already said all that. So now we're going to move into the environmental impact, which is a health issue for everyone, not only humans, but plants and animals. So it's also a community issue. So the large conventional agriculture, the way it's done today, our current food system is responsible for 44 to 57% of all global greenhouse gas emissions. And the topsoil especially, we are losing tons and tons of topsoil, and that topsoil helps keep the environment healthy. So I am a no-till farmer, and I have been doing a lot of research over the past 5 years about tilling and no-tilling and what effect that is on our environment. And a lot of the no-till stuff you hear about is for the big row croppers, the corn and soybean, which is great. I think no-till for those systems is imperative. And I'm glad that it's taking hold. And I'm going to give you a little background of what that means. So when the soil is tilled, you can see in this picture, the wind itself will carry a lot of the topsoil away. So if it's dry out, there goes your topsoil. That's one way of it leaving. Also, it leaves ground bare. And as soon as you get a rain, there it goes down the waterways. And so not only is your topsoil washing away, but it's also going into our water, which is harmful to all of the stuff that's living in the water. So that's how we get all the fertilizers and the pesticides into our water system, is because it washes off the soil when it's left bare and it's tilled and it's all fluffy and it just can go away. So it also releases carbon dioxide into the air. So we are just letting it go out of our soil. Our soil is the best way to soak that stuff in. Our earth is a sponge. And so when we do no-till systems, Also, regenerative agriculture. I don't know if you've heard that term before. It's kind of a new one that's being thrown around in the ag world. But regenerative agriculture means that we are using the land as that sponge, as a way to pull the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and put it back into the soil. That's where it needs to be. And that is how agriculture can help remedy the climate situation. And I didn't find the statistics for this, but there's all sorts of statistics about how if every farm in the whole world started doing regenerative agriculture, the turn that we can make in the climate situation is astronomical. So it really is kind of up to agriculture to try to turn this thing around. And so as a tiny little farm that I do, I'm doing my part, but we also need to like educate other farmers. And there's all these organizations that are doing that, which is amazing. And I'm going to give them a little spiel at the end because they're also really important. The advocacy work. That's like another farmer's job description. Like if you sign up to be a farmer, you sign up to be an advocate. And I didn't know that when I started farming, but that's just what happens, and whether you like it or not. So, sustainable agriculture practices, like I've already said all this just now, but we can help sequester the carbon in the ground. Also, the use of cover crops, crop rotations, increasing the organic matter in the soil. Those are the things that are going to help with the CO2 issue also, but also preventing erosion and all of that. So no-till systems are a way to actually improve the organism habitat in the soil. So when you till up some soil, you're tilling these layers. There are layers in the ground, and in each layer, there are certain organisms that live. And there are organisms that live close to the top, and there's organisms that live down here, and they don't like to mix because of certain situations, because of the aggregates that are in the soil, because of the temperature, because of the moisture level. There's all these different factors that these organisms choose to live down in there and up here. But when you till it, you're mixing it all up, and that kills those organisms because the ones down here can't live up there. That's just not the way they were made. And so when you kill those organisms, you are making it so they can't break things down. And those organisms need to break things down in order to have organic matter. Organic matter is the way. Organic matter is the topsoil. That is what we need. So when we don't till, we keep these layers, and you can see in this picture, even though it's a cartoon, you can see those layers and how happy those animals are. They can eat, they can live freely in the no-till system. I can talk no-till for hours. So this is kind of a conclusion, but I have so much more to say. So buying locally and seasonally will promote a healthy farm economy, or community economy, really. Healthy people and a healthy environment. So there are lots of ways that you can eat locally. The easiest thing to do is to go to the farmer's market. You know for sure that those are local foods, especially if you go to the River Falls Farmers Market. It is in their mission that everything has to be produced by them. It's amazing how many people come up to my stand and they're like, "Did you grow this?" I'm like, "Yes, I had to. I couldn't be here if I didn't." Everyone grew these things that they're selling. So the farmers market is a great way of shopping locally and getting to know the farmers too. Getting to know the farmers is a great way to be a part of your local agriculture system. Shop at your food co-ops. The food co-ops are kind of the last frontier of local foods and grocery stores I have seen, and even those are getting harder and harder. Our local food co-op in River Falls, the Whole Earth Grocery Co-op, is fantastic at buying local food. At other co-ops I've worked at, it's like pulling teeth trying to get into the co-ops because they just they want it to be easy. They want to go through the distributor. They want to go through their list that they're given. They want to go through the big places that are really easy to manage. They don't want to deal with me, who I'm like, well, I've got 100 heads of lettuce and 5 pounds of tomatoes. They don't want to deal with me. So I understand that, but it makes it so there's not as much local stuff in the co-ops. So those big co-ops in the cities, I'm seeing the local produce go down and down and down. Our co-op here is not like that. They're great. I'm also kind of on the board, so I'm a promoter of our food co-op. It is a fantastic place. They not only get local produce, but they get local products, which is just as important as getting local food. Also, you can get direct from the farmer. So some farmers have farm stands, not all of them. I do. It's a self-serve farm stand. It's an honor system. It's kind of a dying breed of farms, of how they do that. A lot of people do online farm stores, which I don't do. But our farm stand's always open and you can always come. And if you meet your farmer, like at a farmer's market, then you can ask them, how do I get produce directly from you? It's super easy and they're always happy to do it. Also, CSAs, community supported agriculture. CSA is kind of a subscription. You pay at the beginning of the season and then you get a box every week or every other week throughout the season. And usually you get whatever is ready at that time. Usually the farmer picks it. Depending on your farm, you can order it. You can get whatever you want in your box. These farms these days are getting really high tech. I'm not there, but if you wanted to go to a high tech farm, I can give you lots and lots of recommendations. So farmers help each other. That's another reason to have local farms, is that we work together. There's no competition in farming, none, because everyone needs to eat. There is a plethora of people to tap into. There's no competition. So I work with all of the local farms in our area and we collaborate. We bounce ideas off of each other. I send people to this farm or that farm, depending on what they need, all the time. So another thing that you can do, other than just buying locally, which is probably the easiest thing you can do on your part, is ask your local grocery store about selling local produce. I guarantee the big grocery stores around here do not. Maybe with a slight exception for Dick's, because I do sell them lettuce sometimes. But I can go into any big grocery store and not see local produce, not one thing. And I know it's easier for them not to, but it takes the customers to demand that. They don't have the demand. So if we talk to them, then it might increase that. Also, school districts, any institution, hospitals, schools, big companies that have cafeterias, any of those places, that is a great place to tap into. And some of the schools have local produce purchasing programs, but it's very, very limited. For instance, our school district has a local food program, but I think they're only getting apples. And I don't know of anything else that they're getting, but that's great. That's a great start. And I'm really happy that our school district is a part of that. So these are lots of resources of where I've gotten my information. A lot of the information I have is just things that have been pounded into my head over and over again over the past 15 years. So I try not to give statistics unless I can back them up for real. So if you'd like to look further into these things, you can. This also brings me to the organizations that help farmers. One, of course, is the Farmers Union. There's a National Farmers Union and there's the Wisconsin Farmers Union. And I'm part of both, but the Wisconsin Farmers Union, they have their own focus. And so this is an organization that brings farmers and even community members together to help revive rural communities. So it's not just about farms only, it's about rural communities, which is what we are. So their job is to make sure that we are staying healthy and vibrant. And if you have any questions about the Wisconsin Farmers Union, I can always answer some questions. Jill Berkey over here can answer questions about that as well. She's in the St. Croix chapter. I'm in the Pierce Pepin chapter. There's also organizations like the Land Stewardship Project, which is based out of Minnesota, but they are an education organization. They also do advocacy work, right, which is what Wisconsin Farmers Union does. They do lobbying at our capital and in Washington to help rural communities. There's also Marble Seed, which is the big conference, the farming conference that they do every year. And if anyone is interested in that conference, please ask me about it. But I'm not going to go through all these other ones. So these are just my credentials. I have a video if we wanted to watch it, depending on how many questions we have. I love questions. I love answering questions. But if we find that we only have 15 minutes worth of questions, then we can watch this beautiful video that was made by the Farmers Union this past year. And it's basically about everything I just said, but it's beautifully done. So how about we open it up to some questions? And you can ask me anything about farm policy, about sustainable farming, whatever. It's open.
I have a question, Lindsay.
Yeah.
Going back to the beginning of your presentation where you were talking about costs, coming out of COVID, we've seen a lot of price increases in manufacturing in general, but the food costs I keep hearing are going up and up and up, and there's a lot of shortages. I don't know if it's shortages, but stuff slow to the shelves. I'm curious what sort of impact that has had in your business.
Well, as a small farmer, I've definitely seen increase in seed prices for sure, increase in amendment prices, but feed prices, that's what really got us this year, is the animal feed. And so we raise pigs and chickens. We don't feed our lambs anything but grass. So luckily we don't have to take that into account. But the pig feed, specifically the organic, certified organic pig feed, every single time we ordered feed, and we get it in pallets, we get bulk feed. And every time we ordered, it got more and more and more expensive. And we just kind of go with the flow. But another really great thing about local farms is they're not going to increase their prices unless they really, really have to. So even though our feed price went up, our pork price didn't, because we did the math. It's easy for us to do that because we're so small and it's very manageable. And it's like, well, okay, we're spending this much on feed now, but we were already making pretty good on the meat side. And so we just left it the way it was in hopes that the feed price might go back down, because I don't want to raise prices and then I guess we can lower them, but I don't know. I don't want to raise prices unless I have to. And almost every single farm that I know does the same thing. They're not going to raise prices unless they really, really have to. So I don't know about the stuff in the grocery stores, but sometimes when they're coming from big corporations, they see an opportunity, and that's why they raise prices. Whereas the local farmers and business people, they're only going to do it if they have to, because they're selling to their community members. We don't want to just like milk our friends and family if it's not necessary. So luckily, we haven't been that affected by what's going on, which is another great reason to be a small farmer, because we are less affected by those big situations.
I'm assuming the gas prices probably have a lot to do with the major corporations, because you're not traveling the stuff and they are.
Yep.
But that's not why I'm here. I have a question. It's kind of silly, but if you're not tilling the soil, you're not, are you leaving the seed right on top, or are you cutting into the ground? And
So we plant in two different ways. We will have transplants, which are actually soil blocks. We don't even put them in pots. We mold soil into a shape, and we plant the seed in that, and then we let it germinate inside to make sure that it's successful. And then we let it be in a greenhouse where it's going to thrive and be watered regularly. And then when it's time to plant that, we go out with a trowel. We put the trowel in the ground, we open up a hole, and we stick that block in. And that's it. The other way that we plant is by seeders, which is not a tractor seeder, it's a push behind. And it's all these metal gears. It's really cool. I love our seeders, but if one thing doesn't work, then the whole thing doesn't work. So it's kind of a headache, but I love them. And that's what we do with all of our direct seeding. So our beets, our carrots, our cilantro, which we plant those constantly, like every week we're planting those things. And that machine has a little cutter in the front of it. And so it kind of opens up this little trench. And you can do this in any soil, tilled or not tilled, it's going to go through. And then the seed gets dropped. And then the back of the machine has a chain. It's so simple. It's just a chain, and it pushes all the soil back into the trench. And so when you're done, you don't even see the seeds. They're already buried. Now, the big row croppers, they have seed drills. And so I don't know how they work, because I've never even seen one, but I know that that's how they do it. So when they plant the corn and soybeans, they use a seed drill that basically pushes it into the soil at the right depth. I think we need a microphone for the questions.
Okay, can I ask mine first, Sherry? Lindsey, could you talk a little bit more about how your animals are involved in regenerative agriculture?
Thank you for asking. So animals are an imperative part in regenerative agriculture. So they need to be pastured. That is the main thing. So I didn't say a word about CAFOs in this presentation, which is a confined animal feeding operation, because that is a whole another presentation. But one of that's how our animals are produced in our current food systems. And that is what is polluting our water. And it's not healthy for the animal, and ultimately not healthy for the people eating them. But when you raise animals in the open on pasture, it makes for healthier animals. They eat the grass. We supplement with feed. They poop on the grass. They build that organic matter. So they are actively helping us build our topsoil as we move them around. They have to be moved. They can't be in one spot. So we move our pigs about once a week, because I actually let them tear up an area, but that's my system. Some people will move their pigs once a day to make sure that they're eating the grass and then moving on so they don't tear up the ground. I use my pigs to tear up some ground, because I then use it to replant with more diverse grass plants, because our pastures in my farm are not very good. So I'm trying to make them better with the use of pigs. But that's basically the way that form of regenerative agriculture works. It's this cycle of eating the grass, pooping it, spreading the seed of the good plants is also what animals do best. So Pastures will naturally become better with animals on them if they are properly rotationally grazed. And that's how we raise our animals. Sherry?
Well, I have a big garden, and I have had it rototilled by a guy who comes out for, I think, about 8 years now at least. And it kind of does bother me. I know I'm destroying a lot of like good worms and things like that. I'd like to transition. I'm just wondering, like the steps to transition, and also then when you talked about your seeding. I was just trying to imagine, what is it that's the cover crop that you're like, what does that ground look like when you put those seeds or those plugs into the ground? So those are my questions. Thank you.
So I'm going to talk about the method that we do. There's lots of other methods out there, but this particular method is what most of the farmers that I know in our area use. And it's incredibly effective, and you can use it on my scale and your scale. It's very easy. So we use silage tarps, which is a reusable plastic. It's not a use one time and dispose. We've been using the same tarps for 4 years, and I don't see us getting rid of them anytime soon. They do have some holes in them, but that's okay. So a silage tarp is it's that stuff that they cover silage hills with. You can get it at Fleet Farm. It's very strong. You can also use billboards, which they will sell you for $5 usually at the billboard companies. And if you put a tarp on your planting area, and depending on how hot it is or how sunny it is, that area will be ready to plant within 2 months. So if you're prepping for next year, you could prep a zone with a silage tarp. And what that does is basically it kills off all the plants. It kills off all the weeds that you don't want there, but it doesn't kill off the organisms that are in the soil. It actually, in my observations, it improves the soil under the tarp because it keeps it wet. It doesn't let the soil dry out. And so when you lift the tarp up, there's just worms everywhere. And then there's also, I know this isn't the most ideal, but there's rodents in there making their tunnels, but that aerates the soil. And so that could be a good thing as well. Mostly mice and voles, not gophers. I've never seen gophers under there. Don't worry. But I really highly recommend experimenting with the tarps. We do use a cover crop, but at the end of the season. So our method is we have tarps down, and then in the spring, we take the tarps off. And it's like they're ready to go. There's no plants there. The soil is moist. It's actually kind of soft. And theoretically, after 3 years, that soil just naturally becomes super soft that you can just put your hand right in there. So when you stop tilling, that doesn't mean the ground gets hard. Actually, when you till, it creates a hard pan about that deep under the soil. So when you plant your plants in and the roots grow, it hits that hard pan that the tiller creates, and that makes the roots not be able to go anywhere. But when you stop tilling, it completely takes that away. And then after a couple of years of adding organic matter, compost, plant material, then all the insects will pull that down and eat it and decompose all that stuff in the ground. And then it makes it softer every year. We've been doing this for 4 years now, and I've definitely seen that happen. So after the silage tarp, we take it off. We add compost, and then we either plant the seed or plant our transplants. And then at the end of the season, when all that stuff is done, rather than just leaving it bare, we plant a cover crop right away. Fast growing stuff like buckwheat, slow growing stuff, but thick, like oats and peas, ryegrass. There's all sorts of cover crops out there, depending on what you want. Does that answer part of the question?
do you mulch it when you plant? Because you don't have, your tomatoes are not, in mass, they're like 2 feet apart or 3 feet apart. How do you mulch it? Or how do you keep the weeds from coming? Do you mulch it?
We do two methods. We mulch with materials like straw or even grass clippings, depending on what it is. We also use, what's it called? Landscape fabric, which is a woven plastic and it's reusable. We've been using the same landscape fabric for 5 years now, and it's all just as great as when we bought it. So it's a reusable product that you can continuously put on in the same areas. So that is considered our mulch for certain things. And there are many benefits to that stuff as well. It keeps the soil moist underneath. It keeps the weeds out, and it also prevents erosion of the soil, because even in a no-till system, depending on the heavy rains, which we're getting more and more of every year in the spring, the rains are getting heavier. And even in a no-till system, if that soil is exposed, it can still be susceptible to washing away. So I've found in areas where I have landscape fabric, none of that happens. And it has been amazing because our place is hilly. There's no flat ground anywhere. So when the rain hits it, it wants to pull everything with it. I should have put the pictures up here. I have pictures from a few years ago comparing my tilled areas, because we used to till. That's the way my farm has always done it before we started doing no-till about 4 years ago. And I have pictures of just soil flowing down the hill. But I was also doing no-till beds at the same time. And so I had these side-by-side comparisons. Can't believe I forgot about that. But the landscape fabric really, it has changed my life. Mainly because of the weeding. And the way that we use landscape fabric is that we have 50-foot beds, and we'll put landscape fabric for a certain thing, and we have burned holes in the fabric. You can't just cut it because it gets frayed and then it puts plastic into the soil. But if you burn the holes, it seals the edges, and so it doesn't degrade. And so we burned holes depending on what we're planting. We will have it at certain lengths, certain distances from each other. And so, from tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, whatever. And then at the end of the year, we fold it, we roll it up, we take it off, we store it. And then the next year, we can put it somewhere else because we always rotate. You got to rotate. If you're going to grow food, you have to rotate your crops. So the reason why all of our beds are 50 feet is so we can take this landscape fabric from here to there.
Did we have any other questions, or should we watch the short video? All right, we're going to do the wrap up and then we'll watch the video. Unfortunately, the video won't be available online, but we will put the link for you to access on your own.
It's an 8-minute video, and it was created by the Wisconsin Farmers Union. And one cool thing about this video is one of the people in the video was selling lamb to our local co-op last year. I don't know if it's there anymore. Maybe people didn't know and they didn't buy it. If you don't know that it's there, but that's why I have to keep talking about shop at your co-op. There's great things there. You're going to wrap up yet right now?
Did you have anything else you wanted to say? I don't want
I
to cut
don't.
you off.
I think I'm good.
Okay.
Does anyone have any other questions?
We're gonna cut off just for our online portion. Kim is adding the link to the video so that if someone is watching online currently or at any other time, you can access that and watch that on your own. But I'd like to just say thank you to Lindsey before we turn off here. And if you have any additional questions, you can post those in the feed online. Thank you, Lindsay.